we are going to be going through my before and after photos where I really share with you behind the scenes of what I have looked like over the years that then led to my 40-pound weight loss with Weight Watchers. And we're going to explore photos so that you can get to know me better, get to know my journey better. Editing Sheila here. A couple of caveats before we get into this very personal video. If you notice me with a little bit of a smile on my face as I'm talking about very personal things, it's not because I'm looking at these lightly or I'm laughing about it. It's just because I'm nervous and I'm awkward and I'm uncomfortable talking about it, and I'm looking at a camera, and it's probably the people pleaser in me that I'm kind of just trying to not gloss over, but make it lighter than the content that feels very heavy. So the smile on my face is not to indicate that I think what I'm talking about is not serious or I'm being flippant. It's probably, honestly, I didn't even notice it until I was going back editing this video that I am just probably nervous, and I put a smile on my face because I don't know what else to do, and that's just my default for my trauma. Smile, everything's okay. Secondly, I'm talking about my own personal, in part of the video, relationship with food as a child. One thing that I have done a lot in my life is not go into my trauma experiences because my brain processes it and goes, there's people that have experienced way worse than me. And so therefore, if there's people that have experienced way worse than me, then why even focus on what I went through? I had it maybe in my mind, like comparatively quote unquote good. What I've learned in therapy is that that's not going to get me anywhere. That doesn't help me reflect and learn and grow from my own personal experiences. So I acknowledge that my experience with food, I grew up in a middle-class home and there was food on my table. There was warm food on my table. I had a full belly, and that is a gift, and I have gratitude despite the fact you'll learn in the video some of the things that I experienced in childhood. I was fed. I was nourished with food. I'm just going to be explaining to you the puzzle pieces, like the clues that I have pieced together that I feel like impacted why overeating, stress eating, comfort food eating became such a big part of my life. And so I'm sharing it through the lens of my experience, not to discount the fact that we have major problems in this world, in the United States, with feeding children and poverty and hunger. I just am focusing in this video on my own personal experience of the puzzle pieces that I think led to my relationship with food. So I don't know if I had to clarify that. I don't know if this was necessary, but it was just important to me because I speak from a genuine place and I want to be as authentic as possible. I really don't know how to do this. I don't even know if I want to post this video, but I know that there's women particularly out there that hear my story and it helps them. And so here we go. We're just going to get into it. I have just come to the conclusion. I used to think, oh, I'll lose the weight and then I'll just be set. And I recognize that that's not the case. It is always something that I'm going to have to keep my eye on. Even this past year, I gained a little bit of weight. I'm still within my window, but I'm kind of in the danger zone. It's just always something I'm going to need to take a look at. So here I am as a young little baby. I am showing you this picture just because I want to emphasize the impact of being born into a home with an abusive environment. And I am somebody that is a trauma survivor. I have CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. My dad was an alcoholic before I was even born. A lot of stress and trauma in my family home. And the trauma that I experienced as a baby, I definitely think shaped my relationship with how I approached food. I had a lot of reoccurring ear infections as a baby and a young child, and that contributed also to a lot of antibiotics that I consumed, and I think that had an impact on my gut health. And I know that gut health, in all the research that I've done, plays a huge role in our hormones and our mental health and how we process food and how our body absorbs nutrients. So here's a photo of me probably in elementary school. This photo makes me really sad. Obviously, I look at this photo and I just look at my eyes. And I don't know what it is about this photo and my eyes, but I see a very sad little girl who on the outside was appearing to be very put together, a very good girl, did well in school, and just wanted to people please and just have people be happy. And when I look at this photo, it's actually quite shocking to me. I see a lot of emptiness and pain and sadness behind these eyes. My relationship with food was just obviously observing my dad, who was addicted to alcohol, and I think he had a very interesting dynamic with food. Like, he would buy ice cream and then the ice cream would be gone the next day. Like, he would just eat a lot of sugar, and he really ate a lot of carbs, eating pasta, like massive quantities of pasta. I've talked about that. Like, I probably had 2 or 3 nights a week when it was just big, massive bowls of pasta. And I really think it was just my dad's way of self-medicating. I think he had really low happy chemicals in his brain due to the sheer quantity of alcohol that he was drinking, that pasta was his ultimate comfort food. Also, my mom was very conscious of her weight, but I don't think she realized it. I don't remember my mom, it wasn't like my mom ever went on diet. So I wasn't growing up in a home where there was a lot of like that kind of pressure, but I just remember always shopping with my mom, always observing her, and it was always, you look in the mirror, you turn to the side, and you suck in your stomach and you press your stomach. And I just watched that over and over again. I also want to point out, I had the same friends from first grade all the way through high school and beyond, and they were both, especially one in particular, was just naturally very skinny, and I was just quote unquote average. I didn't consider myself overweight. It's not like that came up in doctor, pediatrician visits or anything like that. But it wasn't until high school that I really started noticing it with her, but I think I was just always very observant. When you grow up in a home environment where there is abuse and trauma, you're very hyper vigilant. So from a young age, I learned, I was just constantly observing everybody, what their dynamic was, their family dynamic, how they dressed, what they look like, what they ate, because I was trying to put the pieces together because I knew that my home environment, like something was wrong, and I wanted to be like everyone else. And I was like trying to figure out what was going on. So that's a characteristic that is also shaping my relationship with food and my relationship with understanding my body and my view of my body. So I was hyper aware of her and how she dressed and how she looked and her body compared to mine. Okay, we're gonna jump quite a bit. I didn't want to go research any pictures of me from high school. I just want to add in here, in high school, I went on my first diet. It was the Atkins diet, and I really think it messed up my metabolism. All I was eating was, well, I wasn't eating any carbs. I was just eating meat and vegetables. I mean, and I know vegetables have some carbs, but I was not eating a balanced diet. We just didn't have good food options available. I was eating for breakfast. Our lunchroom had a little window where you could buy treats and bagels. I started eating bagels. I started eating the fresh cookies, and I would buy those all the time. I had started to sneak food. You know, if my mom had a candy dish out during the holidays, I would eat the candy in the candy dish and hide the wrappers. If my parents ran errands and I was home alone, I would go in and already start to strategically think about, how can I eat these cookies so it doesn't look like I've eaten that much, and rearrange them. I was already starting to just like want to stuff my face with Cheez-Its. I just remember eating so many pretzels and so many Cheez-Its. And to this day, both of those foods are very triggering for me. I have to make sure that I buy smaller portions because I can just eat the whole thing. It was definitely a coping mechanism in the afternoons, after school, the stress of my home life, and just wanting to feel the sheer quantity of gummy carbs filling my mouth and then filling my stomach. Okay, so here we have a photo of me in a college. I had a great metabolism. Yay, my metabolism kept up, but I was eating so horribly. I was very active, but I was eating burritos all the time. My friend worked at this breakfast restaurant, so we got a discount. And I would go through Pepsi's 2 or 3 huge glasses that were like this big of Pepsi. Just late nights. I was drinking a lot in college. This is when I started to get my panic attacks, my anxiety. When you leave an alcoholic, traumatic home environment, when you're there, you don't have the symptoms of the anxiety and the panic. It often happens when you leave the environment and you're out in the real world. And so it was basically like I'd left a prison and I was in college and it was just a free for all. I was running, I was going to the gym, my friends were active. So I was active and my metabolism was high. But the issue that I want to point out here is that I was not developing habits that gave me awareness around food. I was just lucking out that my body had not caught up with the sheer volume of junk food, alcohol, sugar that I was consuming. And then this is when I had a friend at the time and we got really obsessed with dieting. Like, we want to lose this amount of weight. Like, I wasn't even, I know everyone talks about it boggles their mind that they would look back on themselves and think I wasn't even overweight. But I grew up in the era of Cosmopolitan magazine, just in the 90s and the 2000s, where it was Kate Moss, it was just celebrities. Jennifer Aniston was super thin. Kate Hudson was super thin. And I wanted to be like them. And so we would cut out pictures of magazines and we would come up with this whole plan of, it was always what we're not going to eat. It was always very rigid and strict. Like, we're not going to eat this and we're going to weigh in every day and we're going to check in with each other and we're going to work out. Just not very sustainable, healthy views of losing weight. And friends, we would just feed off of each other. And we didn't have any boundaries of like, but you look fabulous, but look at you. It was like, they wanted to lose weight and I wanted to lose weight. And we just get in this bubble of like thinking it was healthy and normal when our bodies were so amazing. I had like no self-esteem. The only thing that was really giving me self-esteem is at this point I was tall, I was tan, I had highlighted blonde hair, and my nickname in college was Malibu Barbie. Like, that was my self-esteem, was my body. I had a couple of girlfriends at the time that were also tall. We got a lot of attention for being tall and slender, like volleyball players. The 3 of us were blonde. We drew a lot of attention. There was just a lot of false self-worth going on during this time. Okay, so this photo, here I am after college, in a relationship that destroyed me. This relationship was with a man we were both in our 20s, and he was just a kid in a candy store, and he wanted me just as a backup plan. And I had no understanding of this. I didn't grow up with siblings. My friends and I didn't really talk about it. Obviously, my mom wasn't good about talking about this with me. So I let this man use me. And I was just like a side gal. And I mean, he would just basically tell me like he was still in love with his ex. I knew he was like, had crushes on other girls. Like, like I said, my self-esteem was so low, and I was in a relationship with him for like 2 years, 3 years. And it destroyed me. Wanting him, how do I say this? Competing with a friend of mine who had met the love of her life in college and was on track to get married. I wanted to be just like her. This was also my friend that was very thin. In high school, that was another thing I forgot to say. In high school, she was thin like a supermodel, like Kate Moss. And I wanted my body to be like hers. And it was very disjointed in my mind. I didn't have anyone to tell me about human bodies, and this is why you're beautiful and what your assets are, and this is why she's beautiful and these are her assets, and you can be different. And it was just always this belief, like, I want to be like her. What's wrong with me because I'm not like her and I'm not like this celebrity? Okay, so I'm dating this man and I just was miserable. But at the time, I didn't know that I had OCD, obviously. And so I was just obsessing about him, obsessing about our relationship. And that's all I thought about. I was totally disconnected from my body. And I just threw myself into what's wrong with me. And I have to convince him that I am the best thing and he'll realize it and we'll be together forever. So he also had issues with food. He also really struggled with his weight. Whereas I, at that point, was able to, my metabolism was keeping up with me. He was really struggling with his weight. And we would go out all the time. We would go out to pho restaurants and I could keep up eating with men. And whatever he would order, I would eat. I was just eating exactly what he was eating. At this point, I had gained a little bit of weight from college, but I wasn't, it's not like I was noticing it or my clothes didn't fit or I wasn't able to shop in the same sizes. Like, everything was still pretty stable. Now we enter when I start to have a problem. Broke up with that ex, a couple of years passed. I started having a lot of issues in my career. This was during teacher layoffs and I was getting laid off every year. So work was very stressful. And my dad was dying of cirrhosis of the liver. This is when I was just about turning 30. Like, I was leaving my 20s and entering into my 30s. And I think this is when my metabolism started to really just stop. Like, just really wasn't keeping up. So I was working and I was going and I was getting frappuccinos before work, stopping at Noah's Bagels and eating bagels for breakfast, Jamba Juice smoothies. I would do extremes, like, oh, I want to lose weight now. And then for breakfast, I would eat a super sugary, which I didn't realize at the time. I just thought yogurt is healthy because I would read all the health magazines and it would tell you what to eat. And it was usually like, drink a smoothie and eat a yogurt for breakfast, a yogurt bowl for breakfast with a lot of fruit. That was the exact opposite of what my body needed. It spiked my blood sugar so much. And so I would just eat this little sugary yogurt. And then I was teaching kindergarten. So I was eating like goldfish and anything that the parents brought in when the kids, I was so stressed out teaching. Like, teaching was so stressful for me that I was just eating all the snacks that the kids had. And then I would be so overwhelmed after work that I would just have these big pasta dinners because that was my comfort food growing up. I was in a new relationship with a new man. And once again, I was in a situation where it was not good. And this is what happens when you have a trauma background and you're just kind of moving through life like a bull in a china shop, like a pinball, and you have no connection to yourself, no self-esteem, and you are just struggling. Panic attacks, anxiety. I was in therapy, but it wasn't helping. I mean, it was just the man that I was with. I just think that he wanted out of the town that he was living in, and I was an option. And I think he did love me. We were convenient for each other and we were both desperate, but I don't think I was his type. I think he wanted a petite, tiny, big-chested Italian woman, brunette. That was his type. And I was tall, blonde, and not that. And I can say that because that's essentially what he told me when we broke up. So I started to gain weight because I was miserable. I moved with him from where I grew up to the area which I'm currently in now. And that threw me totally out of my comfort zone. My dad was dying. And so I just didn't know how to cope with any of it. And he was Italian, part Italian. And when I started living with him, he was cooking pasta every night. Just huge linguine with clams, eggplant parmesan, lasagna. He would make pizza. And
up until this point, I just kept doing what I'd always done. I can eat a lot. The weight started to come on. This is actually the night of this photo. I remember crying in the car with him because I didn't feel beautiful. And he was so mean about it. Like, there was no compassion with him of, oh my goodness, I'm here for you. What are you going through? Just that comfort, that support. He had no patience for the fact that my dad had died at this point. He was so focused on advancing his career, and meanwhile, my teaching career is struggling. He wanted to live where we move. At the time, now I love where I live, but I didn't really know if I wanted to do the move. And so he was just on a trajectory of advancing his life. And meanwhile, I was over here like, I don't even know what's going on with my life. So that night, we went to my friend's birthday where this photo was taken, and he got a text message. Long story short, it was from the girl that he ended up cheating on me with. I was just a shell of a person. This is when I had to leave teaching because I was having so much anxiety and panic. I couldn't even be in the classroom. I was starting my own business, and I was just eating a lot of my feelings. I didn't know. I had a mom who never felt feelings, stuffed all of her feelings and hid her feelings, and a father who only knew one feeling, which was rage and anger. And I was having a lot of feelings with life, and food was the way that I knew how to help. Like, food was my immediate life raft to drowning in so many feelings that I didn't understand. And so this is when I really locked in my relationship to the next level with food for comfort. Food saves me. Food is my anchor in life. We ended up breaking up, and this next photo is with actually my ex-husband. This was the photo that I saw of myself, and I said, I need to do something different. I need to change. And this was the photo that activated me on re-signing up for Weight Watchers. Over the course of, from college until this point, I'd been off and on Weight Watchers because I was always wanting to just do a diet. That's going to be the quick fix. Then I'll be better. If I can lose weight, then everything in my life will be better. I'll have better relationships. I'll like my job better. Losing weight after college became the focus of, if I could just do that, then I will be okay. And obviously that is a very childlike, black and white, limited view of the complexity of what was happening in my life crumbling around me. So off and on Weight Watchers, but that was the photo that was really like, I'm going to get back to Weight Watchers and give this a try. My mom never did Weight Watchers. I only knew Weight Watchers through friends, that they would sign up and I would join them and do it with them. And I liked it. I liked going to the meetings. I loved the shop and shopping and buying the stuff. I loved the magazine. I loved the food. I fell in love with the whole dynamic and culture of Weight Watchers. So when I saw this picture of myself, I never went to, I'll do Jenny Craig, or it was always Weight Watchers was my standby. And I'd had some success with Weight Watchers and then gained it all back. And then some success and gained it all back and more. So at this point, I was in a relationship again where I was just lost. I don't blame any of these men. I was very hurt and struggling and dysfunctional and had a lot of mental health struggles going on, and I chose partners that had the same. In the relationship before this, I had the man that was making all the Italian food, but had the metabolism of an Olympic athlete. He could not even get fat on his body. He was just all muscle and just rock hard. After we broke up and I had been cheated on and I continued to gain weight, I had just kind of accepted in my mind, like, he was hot. I had decided that when I was with him, I was still at my level of hotness. And then it was like something clicked in my brain where I decided I'm not attractive anymore. Before, I had told you in college, it was like I was tall, I was tan, and I was relatively average thin weight. And that was like my picture of my self-worth. And then as soon as that cheating happened and we broke up and I knew I was not fitting in, this is when I was I couldn't even go into a store anymore and find a size that fit me in my favorite stores. And I had only one store that I could go to shop at. This was not when plus size was an option, really. And I just made a decision. He was very attractive by society standards. And I just made a decision now I wasn't attractive anymore and I could never get a man like that. So when I started dating again, I just kind of like, it's like I make this is part of my OCD, like avoidance, like rules in my mind. Like this is how it's just gonna be. And I just made up my mind. This is how I look now. I'm not as pretty, I'm not as attractive, and this is the kind of man that I deserve. He's got to have some emotional issues, mental health issues, and he's gonna look this certain way. So I ended up in a relationship with somebody that really struggled with food. I was in a similar situation where there's just like a lot of eating and a lot of drinking. At this point, my business that I started had closed. That felt like a failure. My teaching career was over. I had become I didn't realize at the time that that I had OCD, and it had gotten so bad that when your OCD is so bad, it isolates you from the world. So I became just very isolated in just my life and living and my enjoyments in life. And my complex post-traumatic stress disorder, my trauma makes me a very codependent person. So when I had a partner in my life, I'm going to say had because we're paving a new path forward. When I had a partner in my life, they became my life. What they ate, what they did, what they experienced, what they wanted to do, like that was my life. And so the weight just kept piling on. I mean, when your body is maxed out on cortisol, I was gaining my weight in my face and I was gaining my weight in my belly. So here's a picture of it was just landing in my belly, my hips, my legs. And I've read now about how that's cortisol, that's stress, and that's so harmful for your organs and so harmful for your heart and your circulation. And then here's a photo of my face, and it was just so puffed up. And now that I look back on pictures of that, I'm just like, wow, I had a lot of inflammation. I was severely inflamed. And it makes sense. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't eating well. I was drinking still. I was stressed out all the time. I didn't realize I had an obsessive compulsive disorder, so my mind was constantly spinning. I hated myself. I hated my life. I didn't feel successful. So here's a photo of me, a full body shot at my heaviest weight. And I have a smile on my face, but my back would go out all the time. I would have weeks where I couldn't even go for a walk, where I was just my knees hurt. I couldn't get through the day without eating like every 20 minutes. I was just constantly eating snacks. I'd have huge breakfasts, huge lunches, huge dinners, desserts. I was eating all the time. All the time. I was not in good health and I was getting sick. I was constantly getting sick. And I had one period where I got sick and I was sick for like 3 months and it was so scary and they didn't know what was wrong with me. It was like a lung thing that I couldn't get rid of. I was working with kids too still and I was picking up all their germs, but I was just constantly sick all the time. Never felt healthy. So this was really a turning point. I had gone on vacation with my ex-husband. I'd been on Weight Watchers for a while. I had lost 14 pounds. I'd gone on vacation. And then in the transition of coming back, I always lost it. It wouldn't stick. My life habits weren't changing enough. My routines weren't sticking enough. And I was just so influenced by him, by people I was around, that I just didn't have a lot of conviction in my why and why I was doing it and the importance of it. So I lost the 14 pounds and then gained it back and more. So when July 2020 rolled around and COVID was happening and I was basically locked down, I was like, I am just throwing everything in my life into a weight health journey. And it clicked. And so I was able to lose 40 pounds. And it changed my life in such a profound way. I didn't care anymore about doing a weight loss diet journey with somebody else. I had tried to do it with my ex-husband too. Like, I was just in self-preservation mode. I had known that my life had hit rock bottom so bad. I was so unhappy and miserable, could barely get out of bed. The joy had just felt like it had been sucked out of my life. I said, I need to change this. And that's when I started my podcast. And here are some photos after my 40-pound weight loss. Here's me playing tennis. These are actually some photos from my dating profile from a while ago, not my recent dating profile, but so here's me playing tennis. Here's me in a swimsuit. I still wear one-piece swimsuits. This, I am not trying, I used to try to want to just be skinny, or I wanted to get back to the size or the weight that I was in college. I'm not about that anymore. I just want to get to the point where I can go throughout the day and not be constantly obsessed with food, where I feel good about my food choices because I feel nourished, where I'm not having blood sugar spikes and blood sugar crashes, where I still have my curves. I'm a curvy gal and I embrace that. And there's just like a lot of body healing perception of myself healed. Here's a photo of me, a full body shot in a Target dress that I absolutely love and just feeling so great. It stopped being about wanting to be thin. It was about, I want to move my body in the world and be in different places and take this body obviously with me. And my body feels sturdy. It feels strong. It feels like it's okay. When I was letting food dictate my life, I was on a roller coaster constantly, and I wanted off of that nightmare ride. And I just wanted to be able to move in the world and be places and just feel like I'm rooted. I don't need food. I can stabilize my blood sugar. And so I'm at this point in these photos, I'm pretty much walking every day, gentle movement, nothing wild. I'm really looking at my protein and I'm really cutting out sugar to the point where I'm basically only eating sugar after dinner. During the day, I'm just kind of like, sugar is a no-go for me. In these photos, it's not about I lost weight to be skinny. I don't care about that anymore. I lost the weight because I wanted to discover my self-worth. I wanted to pull off these layers of weight that I had put on my body through food and just miserableness to hide myself away from the world. It's like I wanted to just emerge and be like, this is who I am. And it's not based on how a man perceives me. It's not based on how society puts women in magazines. It's not based on any of that. It's just like, this is how I was born. Finally, like, this is my height. I still struggle with my height a lot. This is how tall I am. This is the curves of my body. This is what weight looks like on my body. This is how I feel strong. This is how I like to move my body. It was like a rediscovery of writing the instruction manual of this is me as a woman. And I'm still struggling to see my beauty. I'm still struggling to identify with myself as a beautiful person. Throughout this journey of these photos, I was still buying sizes that were way too big with me. It took years before I actually started to see my body for what it was after I had lost the weight. And the miracle of these photos is that I'm going through a divorce. I'm like going through one of the most stressful things in my life. And it is a miracle to me that I've been able to keep my weight loss off. Although I've gained a tiny bit, I've been able to keep it off because I've really built foundational values and habits and structures around my relationship with food that has boundaries. And so these photos are just like my Olympic medal of, it's not just about the number on the scale. It's about my boundaries and relationship with food and healing that. If I can heal my relationship with food, that as a main relationship, and learn how to be to be constant, consistent, disciplined, structured, loving, nurturing, aware, driven, passionate, all around food, and have good boundaries. I can do it in my actual human relationships. So when I talk about being on a weight loss journey and a wellness journey, it's so much more than just the number on the scale. This is like practical, foundational life skills that I didn't have growing up, that I'm like reteaching myself. So that is the journey with my weight through pictures. It's gonna be a really long video and it's gonna be so much editing. And my goal going forward is to just health. Health is wealth. And when I look at photos and when I see myself, am I nourishing myself from a healthy view? That's what I care about. That is what I care about. And I do want to look good and feel good. And my perceptions of that have changed as well. I just want to feel good in my body. And what is that? What does that look like? SheilaJaneWellness.com. Honestly, just go to SheilaJaneWellness.com. I also would love to walk this journey with you. If you'd like to connect with me one-on-one in like a one-on-one coaching session, go to my website, SheilaJaneWellness.com, and we can connect and we can set something up and work together. I just love to have you part of my community, and we'll talk soon. Bye.